Ladies and gentlemen, we have a real treat for you this evening. All the way from London, England, James Mullinger was one of the UK's top comedians. He had his own show on Comedy Central, which saw him interviewing everyone from Tom Cruise to Amy Schumer and Jerry Seinfeld to George Clooney. He's appeared in big screen movies, wrote a best-selling book, and was the comedy editor for GQ magazine. Then he moved to New Brunswick, and he's going to tell you why. He's taken Canada by storm since his arrival. He was nominated for the Just for Laughs Best Comedy Show Award and a Canadian Comedy Award. A big-budget British movie was made about his life, starring actors from Downton Abbey, Coronation Street, and Twilight. And he's sold out New Brunswick's biggest indoor venue, Harbour Station Arena, beating Jerry Seinfeld's sales record in 2016, and then again in April 2018 when he beat his own record. Already this year, he's appeared on CBC's The Debaters twice. His new stand-up special debuted in the United States to rave reviews, and he loves living here so much that he launched his own magazine celebrating the East Coast, titled The Maritime Edit, which sells over 50,000 copies internationally. Perhaps most impressively, in his short time here, he has single-handedly raised over $150,000 for local charities. Please put your hands together for James Mullinger.
Hello, it's me, James Mullinger. It's you at home or at work. Here we are in a virtual setting. I am genuinely honoured and delighted to be here with all of you. I salute everyone at the New Brunswick Teachers Association. I can't thank you enough for everything you've done for our communities and for our children over the past year, and indeed for all time. I think though we've been in this for a year now. We've been doing this long enough. We've all been having to do things virtually, see friends, see family, even teaching virtually. So I think it's time we upped the ante a bit, don't you? Like, I can't just still be here just talking into a laptop, doing it like this, with silly things like, for example, using a microphone that isn't even plugged in. Yeah, can you believe this? For 14 months I've been standing here using a microphone that isn't actually plugged in. The actual microphone you can hear me through when I do these virtual shows is this, which I obviously can't stand here using this for a gig, because I look like Winston Churchill during the First World War, doing an RKO radio broadcast, don't I? The Germans are coming, hide in your bunkers. So I use this. When I left London, I was given this microphone as a gift. It has hashtag living the dream in it. Not been much dream living lately. I remember thinking, when will I ever use a gold microphone? Turns out, global pandemic. Anyway, point being, we are going to up the ante. We're not going to do this. I'm not going to do it through a laptop. We're going to do it like this. Yes, that's right. Look, I've got a professional camera crew. I've got a man that knows what he's doing. An award-winning filmmaker, Tyler Warren Ellis, recently won Best Documentary. There he is. That's him. You can see him because there's lots of cameras, because we're doing this properly, ladies and gents. He recently won Best Documentary at the Chicago Film Festival Awards. He is, of course, a graduate of the Kennebecasis Valley High School. He has had a wonderful upbringing here in New Brunswick, and he is a product of the New Brunswick education system, and that is thanks to all of you. So I'm truly honoured to be here. This has been a very, very strange year. It's been altogether different, as we're talking about today. So I'm going to get this out of the way, get all these books I've been piling up here for 14 months doing shows, and I'm going to do it with all of these cameras and lights and make it special, because I love you New Brunswick teachers. So let me get all this out the way. I don't think I'm going to need this, do I? No, it's not me. No laptops, no books piled up. I'm not even going to use this, because look, I'm going all out. We're doing things properly today. Yes. Welcome to the New Brunswick Comedy Club, designed especially for the New Brunswick Teachers Association. Here we go. So this is it, ladies and gentlemen. Like I say, colossally honoured to be here with you all, true New Brunswick heroes. You are proof that anything is possible in New Brunswick, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. I really am here to celebrate the place that we are, and by that I mean the beauty of New Brunswick, but also the beauty of the people and the community. But before we do that, in any comedy or indeed keynote presentation, what we want to do is get to know each other first. Now, normally, if we were in the same room, I would be talking to you all individually, but we can't do that now, so I want to talk a bit about what we've all been going through over the past 12 months. Now, as I say, you have all been heroes. I don't know how you've coped. The government changing the goalposts in the time. Is it red? Is it yellow? Is it orange? Are kids allowed to... Can they have Valentine's cards? Do Valentine's cards have COVID? Who knows? You've had to navigate all of this and figure it out. And I can honestly say that our children have never appreciated you all more because they have seen what homeschooling looks like, and it is not fun for them. So I salute you, and I really could not be happier to be speaking with you here today. In addition to all of your heroic behaviour this year, we've also found that this was the year that the world discovered that New Brunswick is the best place in the world to live. Finally, New Brunswick was number one. We were number one, us and New Zealand, one of the safest places in the world to live. We're the last to be hit by war, crime, terrorism, and indeed global pandemics. And it should be something we celebrate. Of course, the government are trying to take credit for that, aren't they? They're trying to take credit for how well we did, but we know the real reason why New Brunswick did so well, don't we? Yes, it's because here in New Brunswick, we've been bloody socially distancing for decades. They're like, oh, you've got to stand 2 meters apart. We're like, yeah, no shit, that's why we live here. We've always done that. But people are losing their minds, aren't they? And of course, we all have to be careful and be sensible, but some people are taking it slightly too far. I mean, when I speak to my friends back in England, they're like, oh, James, it's going very well here in London. We're down to 10,000 deaths a day. How many are in New Brunswick? I'm like, oh, well, we've got 30 cases and everyone's losing their minds. Only yesterday I was walking along here, along the Rossay Road to the bus stop to drop my kids off to go to school, right? They are 7 and 9. We're walking along. I'm wearing my mask, responsible. Man walks towards me, also wearing a mask. The sidewalk is very wide. He sees me. He's 20 meters away. He jumps in the road to avoid me, almost gets hit by the school bus. I'm saying we have to be careful here. We've got to prioritize. We've got to keep our heads on because there are other things to die of other than just COVID. And we're all trying to follow the rules. I mean, just going out is a minefield. Going to Sobeys is a minefield now, isn't it? Like, we're all doing the right thing, aren't we? We're following the lines. We're following the lines. Follow the lines in the Sobeys. Follow the lines. Follow the lines. And then every now and again, you get somewhere and you're like, oh, the arrow is pointing that way. And the ketchup's just there, isn't it? It's just there. Now, is anyone? Can I reach? Am I allowed to reach? If no one's looking, can I reach in? Can I reach in? Am I allowed to reach for it? And then you know what I did? I started walking backwards. I was like, is this allowed? Is it? If I'm facing the same way as the arrow, is that okay? And then some ladies spotted me, and of course I'm wearing a New Brunswick mask, and I have these eyebrows, and I live in a small town outside St. John with a community of 10,000 people. Everyone knows everyone. Everyone's related. Of course, they recognise me. They're like, oh, it's that stupid English comedian. It's him. He was going the wrong way. He was going the wrong way. I'm mortified. A thing like that can ruin you in this province. It can ruin you. So there I was, absolutely mortified. I scuttled off, very embarrassed, because I don't want to break the rules. I want to do things properly. And I'm standing in the line, and I can hear them all complaining. And of course, lineups in New Brunswick didn't move very quickly even before a global pandemic, but now with all of the wiping, everything's a bit slower. And I thought to myself, this can't get any worse. And then suddenly, horror upon horrors, I felt a cough coming on, didn't I? Who knew that coughing in public would become the most terrifying thing in the world? I'm standing there thinking, oh my goodness, after walking the wrong way, I can't be caught coughing now. I'm trying to hold it in. My eyes are watering. I didn't know what I was going to do. And then suddenly I was saved. I felt a fart brewing at the exact same time. Yeah. Do you remember the good old days when we used to cough to cover up our farts? Not anymore. No, now we're farting to cover up our coughs. That is the very definition of the new normal. And of course, at the start of all this, everyone became obsessed with watching pandemic movies, didn't they? It was very strange. I had friends in England messaging me going, oh my God, James, you've got to watch Contagion. It's just like this. I'm like, what? Steven Soderbergh's Contagion? A 10-year-old movie? Why would I watch that now? Oh, you've got to watch it. It's just like this. It had been on Netflix for years, a movie starring Gwyneth Paltrow, right? And suddenly, overnight, it was number one on the Netflix box office simply because it's about a global pandemic. Everyone was like, you've got to watch it. It's just like this. I watched that movie. Nothing like this. There was not a single scene in that movie where a family of four do not leave the couch for 7 days straight because they're eating industrial-sized bags of Chicago mix and drinking boxes of wine for breakfast. Nothing like this. the wine consumption did get out of hand. I pivoted I pivoted from bottles of wine to boxes, because I think AMBL was shrinking the bottles. They were going very quickly. So about March 15th, I switched to the box of wine. My very first ever box of wine. I found myself standing at the sink sucking the bag. Have you done that, where you kind of end up and you think, there's some in there, there's some more in there. You've got lips around the teat and you're kind of milking the bag, getting those last few drops out. And then my eyes darted over to the oven clock and it said 10:15 a.m. I said, it's time to start the homeschooling, kids. Question number 1, how much has Daddy had to drink this morning? Clue, it's on the box. It's on the box. We were all drinking too much. Of course, people obviously were turning to other things, but lots of people were turning to cannabis. And I'm sure you heard that Cannabis NB turned a profit for the first time ever. Because I'm not sure if you knew this, but prior to the global pandemic, the New Brunswick government were actually the first people in world history to lose money selling drugs. Who even knew that was possible? I thought it was generally understood that if you're willing to be morally bereft and sell drugs, legal or illegal, quite an easy way to turn a profit. No, not these guys. No, they were absolutely hemorrhaging money. All they needed to turn a profit was to tell everyone that they couldn't leave their house, they had to stay home, they couldn't go to work, your kids are staying in there with you too, there's a load of free money, and this thing that we would have thrown you in jail for possessing a year ago is now an essential service. Suddenly, it's boom time for Cannabis NB. That's not really my bag. I was more into the wine and the Chicago mix. Of course, my wife got worried. She was like, James, we're getting very unhealthy. We're getting very unfit. We've got to get in shape. I said, this is not the time for this. And she said, no, I've read about this thing called intermittent fasting. I said, what's that? She said, it's amazing. You can eat what you want for certain hours of the day, but then you fast for like a 16-hour period. Like you starve yourself for 16 hours, then you eat what you want the rest. I said, I can't do that. Not right now. But she did it. She did it. She's actually been doing it. My wife has been doing the intermittent fasting now for 8 months every day. Yeah. Well, I say that. What I mean is she passes out drunk at 9 p.m. every night and she's too hungover to eat till 2 p.m. the next day. So I'm going to try avoid using any of those phrases today, like the new normal and pivoting, and we're all sick of hearing them. We're all sick of hearing those phrases that a year ago when all of this started, Trudeau would come out for his kind of 12 noon, his little conference every day, his daily cash giveaway. He would walk out of that cash printing house that he's got there every day. The beard be a bit long, a bit grey. He'd be like, we got money for you, money for you, money for you, money for you. And we're all sat there with our virtual scratch cards going, you got anything for British comedians living in New Brunswick, Trudeau? No? No? Okay, we'll try again tomorrow, love. Maybe it'll be a rollover. I'm going to try and avoid using any of those phrases. And we all did, I won't say pivot, I'll say we all repurposed our lives. I discovered this way of doing things, the virtual. I did some drive-in shows last summer. I did shows at the Sussex Drive-In, the Brackley Drive-In. And again, it was a safe way of continuing to do. That's what we all had to do. We had to find ways. We had to learn. I hadn't even heard of Zoom in February last year, and now we've all had to learn. But it was strange because things can occur in these environments that would never happen in a normal setting, wouldn't happen in a classroom, wouldn't happen on a stage in a theatre. I'll give you an example. I was at the Sussex Drive-In doing a show, and it was strange. I'd never been to a drive-in before. My first time at a drive-in movie theatre, I'm on stage at the drive-in. Of course, I can't see anything. There's no sound coming out of the speakers because it's just going into people's cars. I can't see faces. I can't hear laughter. All I can see is cars, just cars, because people are in their cars. So we all had to figure it out together, because it was the first one that took place anywhere in Canada, the first comedy show in a drive-in. We had no idea what was going to happen, and as it turned out, we figured it out together, almost through osmosis, like true New Brunswickers, right? I would do the joke, do the punchline, and then everyone would honk their horns and flash their lights to say that they thought it was funny. It was a bit like doing a gig in a Disney Cars movie. I had to basically just pretend that the cars were people, right? Anyway, I'm halfway through a joke at one point and everyone starts going mad. They're honking, they're flashing, the whole field is going crazy, 500 cars all blasting, and I can't figure out what's going on. I look down, it turns out there is a raccoon following me around the stage. I know, only in New Brunswick, right? And only during a global pandemic. Never once have I been in a theatre or comedy club and thought to myself, I do hope a raccoon doesn't come up here and start chasing me around. But that pales into comparison to what happened here in this very spot. Last June, I was booked to do a show for the President's Organization. That is one of those organizations where CEOs and presidents across North America are all members of it, and they meet once a year for a kind of gathering. And it was due to take place at the Fairmont Springs in Banff. I was due to be doing the comedy, and then Pete Luckett was going to be doing a wine tasting in the afternoon. Michael Smith was going to kick a meal. And of course, it couldn't happen, like most things, but we know why. Don't you hate that on the news where they say, the NHL is cancelled due to COVID? I think we can stop saying due to COVID. Like, nothing's been cancelled for any other reason but COVID. They should just remove the words due to COVID. They can just say the world's ended, wink. Let's just do a wink from now on. Let's just remove, isn't it depressing, due to COVID? So basically, this event was due to take place. Me, Chef Michael Smith, Pete Luckett wine tasting, couldn't happen. You get it, right? So it went virtual instead. So I'm standing here. I watched the wine tasting, very nice. They sent the wine out to everyone. Michael Smith did a little cooking presentation, and then it was me doing the stand-up. And I'm halfway through the gig, and it's going well. But halfway through a sentence, they all just burst out laughing, right? Just randomly. And I'm sure you know how Zoom gigs work, where everyone's muted, but they keep their videos on, so I can see all their little faces. So I obviously got into this job because I crave laughter. But for the last year, I've had to replace my love of laughter and applause with instead just little pictures of people going, That's what I feed off now. I live for just seeing a little box of someone going like this. So I'm watching them, and I'm midway through a sentence, and out of the blue, I've not said anything funny, they all just burst into hysterics. I'm like, what is going on? This is very strange. They're all in different states across America, all in different provinces across Canada. It's not like something's happened in the room, but why are they all laughing at the same time? I've not said anything funny. I haven't got to the punchline. I'm looking down. I can't figure it out. And then I suddenly hear a noise behind me. I turn around. My 7-year-old son, River, is standing there naked, waving his willy at them. I know! Never once in 20 years of doing stand-up comedy have I ever been on stage worrying, I do hope a 7-year-old doesn't come out and start flashing his willy at the audience. Not once! But global pandemic, anything can happen. We've all had Zoom nightmares, but you know what really hurt about this one? What really hurt me was the fact that in all the years I've been doing this, I've never seen an audience laugh harder than they did at my 7-year-old's willy. So when I'm eventually allowed back on the road in the year 2030 or whenever we're all vaccinated, I might just take River on the road with me, and any time a gig's going badly, I'll be like, hey, River, come on out, and he can just run out going, but that is what we've been putting up with. This time a year ago, I was starting a tour. I was beginning a national tour that was actually going to take me across Canada. And it was a show that I'd written the previous year, and I'd given it quite a stupid name, it turned out. The show that I was in the middle of when all of this happened was actually called Embrace Where You Live. Yeah, seems like a bloody stupid name for a tour now, since we've had no choice but to embrace where we live. But if I have one message, ladies and gentlemen, it would have to be careful what you wish for. Because last March, when everything ended on that dreaded Friday the 13th of March, do you remember that, when everything shut down? Everyone was like, oh, Friday the 13th, this is going to be a bad day. Little did we know it was going to be a bad forever. The previous weekend, I was in Vancouver on that tour doing a show. Now, I love this job. I love everything about performing. But I only really know people in New Brunswick. And of course, in New Brunswick, I know everyone because there's one degree of separation between all of us. I did my first in-person show last week. A lady came up to me after the show. She said, we're basically related. I said, oh, how do I know you? She said, your father-in-law's brother changed my septic tank last week. Great, only in New Brunswick. So I don't really know people elsewhere. So I did this show in Vancouver, very fun, in a big theatre, ended up back at the hotel. And traditionally my job is being on the road for 4 or 5 nights a week, and always badly scheduled, like going to Vancouver, coming back, then going back and doing Kelowna and back again. I remember sitting on my bed in the hotel room in Vancouver the first weekend in March 2020, sitting there after the show about 10, 11 at night, thinking to myself, what I would do for a bit more quality time at home with the wife and kids. I will never have that thought ever again, ladies and gents. So be careful what you wish for in life. And we are very blessed here. We're very blessed as parents to have amazing teachers like yourselves. We're also blessed because we have been able to go back to some sort of normal. I mean, England right now is back in a lockdown. A year in, my idiot friends, my idiot school friends are having to homeschool their children now, a year in. And I spoke to my mum on the phone yesterday back in England, and she put it beautifully. She said, if you think England's in a bad way now, she said, just think, James, in 20 years, this country will be being run by people that were homeschooled by alcoholics. Beautiful. We are very blessed to be here, and I thank you for organising this incredible conference. Steve Patterson, the wonderful comedian and host of CBC's Debaters, said something quite magical. He said, none of us can necessarily see the light at the end of this tunnel right now, so we have to find light in the tunnel, and that's what we're doing here today. So I will now begin. This was just me getting to know you. This was just a bit of laughs to get us off to a start. I will now transition, not pivot, into my keynote speech that I came here to deliver today. Anything is possible. And I would like to start that by saying something to all of you that nobody said to me when I left London, England, and moved to this beautiful region 7 years ago. And that thing is welcome. Because no one said that to me. I've lived and worked in other parts of the world, and people say, you arrive in those places and people go, oh, you've just moved here? Welcome, or greetings. But you don't do that here in New Brunswick. You have a completely different way of welcoming newcomers who come here. No one says welcome or greetings. You say, why the hell did you come here? And you've got to stop doing that. It's not helping. It's not helping making newcomers like myself feel like idiots for coming here. And I couldn't understand why you were doing it. Because I was like, look around. You've got beautiful views, friendly people, and thanks to annual flooding, waterfront mansions that cost 79 cents. It's amazing. And I know what people are asking, really. They're just curious. They want to know their story. But now that we have so many people flocking here from all over Canada and all over the world to start new lives and start new businesses, we have to change the dialogue. We've got to stop saying, why the hell did you move here? And not pivot it, but transition it into a different sentence of something along the lines of, oh, what brought you here? And you don't have to do it in the Queen's voice. That's just how I do it. Oh, what brought you here? That's the way to ask. And I have many, many funny answers in my comedy as to why I moved here. But I would like to just share with you the honest to God real reason why I moved to New Brunswick 7 years ago. And it really goes back to my childhood. As a child, and certainly when I was kind of my oldest son's age, 9 or 10 years old, I was having a tough time. I was very badly picked on by other kids. Didn't have any friends. I was not athletic at all. Always picked last, which upset me. Was always picked on, and I wasn't academic either. I was struggling in class, and I'll tell you a bit more about that later. But I would come home very sad, and one day some kids pushed me off a wall, and I remember coming home feeling very sad. I was crying. I had cuts and scrapes and bruises all over me, and I remember sitting on my bed and just crying. And my mum came in, and she sat next to me, and she said, look, she said, I know how you feel. She said, but listen, whenever you feel like this, whenever you feel like life's not worth living, she said, just think of the happiest day of your life. And she reminded me of this recently, because I turned to her and I said, well, when will that be? And she said, okay. Well, she said, think of last year. What was the happiest day of your year last year? And I thought about it for a minute, and I realized immediately it was the previous summer. We had gone to visit my grandma. Now, my grandmother lived in a place called Bournemouth, which was like a seaside community that was surrounded by beautiful forests and friendly people. It was totally unlike the place that I was growing up in London, where it was just barbed wire and graffiti and people that didn't speak to each other and no sense of community. And I couldn't believe it. And we went there on holiday for 2 weeks. And I said, Mum, do you remember we went to stay with Grandma last summer for 2 weeks? And there was that one day that it didn't rain, and we went to the beach and we listened to the sound of the water. I made sandcastles. I chatted with other kids. I couldn't believe other kids were chatting with us. We had beautiful seafood from a seafood restaurant on the seafront. We then went for a walk in some woods, and I couldn't believe the incredible views. And everywhere we walked, Mum, do you remember, people would say hello to us. People would say hello. I said, that was the happiest day of my life. And my mum said, every time you feel down or feel depressed about anything, she said, just think of that day and you will be transported there. And it was a coping mechanism which I used throughout my entire childhood and in some ways often used today. But what I couldn't believe about that place was that this magical oasis existed, and I thought there was nowhere else like that in the world until the year 2000, when I started dating a girl in London who was from a part of Canada I'd never heard of, and she said, why don't you come and visit my family for Christmas? And I came to New Brunswick for the first time, and I couldn't believe that a place as magical as the place that my grandmother lived actually existed, a place full of friendly people, beautiful views, water, amazing seafood, a sense of community. I couldn't believe it. It was like what my grandmother had times 100, and this was this incredible eye-opening moment for me in the year 2000. So New Brunswick became my happy place, and we visited here every year, and every year summer, often at Christmas too, and it became my happy place. I wasn't always happy in London. I would come here and it would revitalize me and make me feel alive again. So when we were pregnant with our second child and thinking about what we should do, I knew the greatest gift I could give my children was this. The happiest day of my entire life as a child was that one day. But by bringing up our children in New Brunswick, that day is there every day. And that is the greatest gift we can give our children. And I thank all of you for creating an environment where this exists. This is thanks to all New Brunswickers, but specifically teachers, where I can honestly say that the education system here was a huge reason why we came here. My children both go to Kennebeckasis Park Elementary down the road. Truly one of the greatest. I couldn't believe it when I came here, and I've done lots of talks at schools, and I've met lots of you before. And the school system here, and again, not without its troubles. And I know, you all obviously day to day have challenges which you overcome. And that's the key to the wonder of this place, is that people come together and look out for each other and overcome those challenges. And those challenges could be anything from political interference or financing or budgets, all of those things. But somehow the children are not aware of any of that. They just go to school and they come home happy. And that is thanks to you. And you create amazing young men like my children are becoming, which they would not have become in London. You create amazing people like Tyler Warren Ellis here, who is a globally renowned filmmaker who learned the art of hard work and community and passion from his time here in the public school system here in New Brunswick. And I really can't thank you enough. I mean, to give you a perfect example, in South London, where I was living right before we moved here, there was 2 schools in our area, 2 schools to send a 5-year-old to. One was barbed wire, graffiti, knife crime on the street outside, crack dealing going outside the school gates. That was one option, and the other option was £5,000 a term. So that 3 terms a year, £5,000 is of course $10,000. So $30,000 a year to send a 5-year-old to school, which of course completely impossible for anyone except millionaires. But here's the thing: Kennebeckasis Park Elementary, 100 times better than the $30,000 a year school back in London. So I just want you to know that I appreciate what you all do and what we have here. Now, don't get me wrong. It is quite different living in New Brunswick to living in central London. You do have to get used to some changes. And again, I mean, who knew? I didn't get the memo. I'll give you an example. In England, if you went to someone's house for dinner and they said to you, would you like a glass of wine? And you said, oh, I'd love a glass of wine, thanks very much. You know what they would do? They would leave the room and they would come back with a glass of wine. No caveats, no buts, just a delicious glass of wine. It doesn't quite work like that here in New Brunswick, does it? No, here in New Brunswick, you go to someone's house for dinner and they say, would you like a glass of wine? And you say, oh, I'd love a glass of wine, thanks very much. There's a sentence they will say that will make your heart drop. And that sentence is, I made it myself. What is with the homemade wine here? Where did it come from? I can see I'm looking into your souls. Some of you are sat there, and some of you make homemade wine. I know it, right? And you're looking at me going, well, it doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. I'd literally never heard of homemade wine in England. It doesn't exist there. Well, maybe in prison. Maybe English prisons, maybe, right? But I had no idea how big a deal it was here. So I stupidly, when I moved here, I went on the CBCs, didn't I, complaining about it, which has meant for the subsequent years that I've been here, I've drunk more homemade wine than all of you put together, because every single house I go to, people go, oh, I heard what you said about the homemade wine. You've got to try my homemade wine. And they're so proud of it, aren't they? Aren't you? You're proud of it. You shouldn't be. Every day I'm having to say, listen, Auntie Brenda, I don't want to drink any of your just add watered poison Kool-Aid moonshine. Buy a bottle, please. Buy a bottle. It's quite a skilled art making wine. But call me old-fashioned if you will, but I'm a big fan of wine-flavoured wine. Yeah. Wine-flavoured wine. It's been very popular for centuries. But no, these people, they think they know better. They're like, oh, James, you must try it. It's a special blend. It's pear and pubic hair flavour. You've had that one if you've been to Sussex, trust me. But the other thing that I had to get used to very quickly here was the way in which you give directions here in New Brunswick. Yes, it is unlike anywhere else in the world. In other parts of the world, you ask a stranger for directions if you're new in town or you're visiting a town. People will give you directions using local landmarks, but you don't do that here, do you? No. Here in New Brunswick, you give directions using landmarks of things that used to be there 25 bloody years ago. It's even worse in the rural areas. I was trying to find my way to a gig in Sussex, New Brunswick last February because, well, my career is going exactly as well as I pretend it is on Facebook. And I asked the guy for directions. I said, excuse me, sir, do you know the way to the Sussex Legion? Word for word, he goes, yeah. He goes, go to the end of this road and turn left at the tree where Donny crashed his bike in 78. No idea. Right? This all came to a head for me. I got lost a few years ago. I found myself at a mall in St. John called Lancaster Mall. Do you know Lancaster Mall, anyone? I don't know if anyone's travelled from the rest of the province to visit Lancaster Mall. If to give you a visual of Lancaster Mall, just picture the mall in the film Dawn of the Dead. But imagine it with a few more zombies in it. That's it. So I was lost. I was trying to find a flooring company. I went up to a lady. I said, excuse me, madam, do you know the way to B&N flooring? She looks very confident. She looks like she knows what's what. Looks like she knows her way around. She looks like she's been living at the mall for some time. I'm in safe hands, I thought. She points like this, and I swear, absolutely true, word for word, this is the first thing she says. She goes, do you know where Zeller's used to be? Do I look or sound like I know where Zeller's used to be? I don't even know what a bloody Zeller's is. No idea. I mean, I now know from my research that the building in question, the building to which she was referring, was actually behind where I was standing. It was in her field of vision, and it would make perfect sense to say where Zeller's used to be if we're talking about like an empty store with an old Zeller's sign swinging off it. But no, it's now quite a well-known established chain called bloody Walmart. She could see the Walmart sign in the periphery of her vision, but she still calls it where Zeller's used to be. Now, I am totally thrown by this. I do lots of work back in England, telling people to come here, telling people to visit here, trying to improve New Brunswick's tourism strategy, do all of these things. And I'm thinking, how am I going to tell people to come here if this is happening? How are they going to find their way around? So that night, I'm on stage at a comedy club, Yuck Yucks in St. John. Well, where Yuck Yucks? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, see, it's not just musicians that can do sing-alongs. I can do them too. Watch this. Okay, everyone together at home, right? Let's go. Where Zeller's used to be. See, this is fun. Lovely. So I'm on stage where Yuck Yucks used to be. And I got to this point in the story, and a woman at the back of the room stands up, very angry, right? She's very angry. She goes, oi. She's obviously not a true New Brunswicker then. I said, why is that? She said, because if she was, she would have said it's where Kmart used to be. Beautiful, beautiful. New Brunswick directions, best in the world. But I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't miss anything about my old life in London. And I truly believe that New Brunswick's a unique place where, as I say, anything is possible. I would like to show you some PowerPoint now. Look, I've even got the PowerPoint clicker. Watch, we're going to change the slides like this. Look, see? Isn't this clever? Technology. It's all thanks to Tyler Warren Ellis. This slide shows you my old life in London. Now, I'm well aware that this might look enviable. I'm well aware that this might look like I was living the dream. But behind the scenes, I was not living the dream. I was sure enough, I was getting to meet my heroes. I was doing photo shoots with people like Prince Harry and working with photographers like David Bailey. I got to break bread and share drinks with people like Hugh Laurie, Idris Elba, Benedict Cumberbatch. This was my life. And that might be great while you're in your 20s. It might be enviable and fun. But the reality is, when it all comes down to it, life is about family. So in my 30s, when my wife and I had our first child, it sucked, frankly. We were there, being invited to all of these parties, of course, which we didn't really want to go to because we just wanted to be home together and home with our child. And I'm basically working a high-pressure job at GQ magazine, using all of my salary to pay a stranger to look after the person that I really want to be with most in the world. My wife had an incredibly stressful job traveling around the world, was never home. And we realized if we don't make a shift now, nothing is going to change. But it was really meeting a hero of mine that was the turning point. And I remember it vividly. It was August 2013, and GQ dispatched me to New York to meet my all-time comedy hero, Jerry Seinfeld. And there I am, just in awe of meeting him. And I did everything I was supposed to do. I had to make a short film with him. I had to do an interview for the print and do all of these different things. But at the end of the day, I wanted to ask him one question, something I'd always wondered. And that question was, why did you quit the TV show Seinfeld when you did? Why did you quit when it was at its cultural, commercial, and critical peak? The fans wanted more, the network wanted more, you were being offered more money than God to carry on. You clearly hadn't run out of ideas, Larry David had more ideas. So I said, so why not do one more season? And he looked me in the eye and he said, that's simple, James. He said, because that's what everybody expected me to do. And he left a pause and he said, there's a good life lesson. He said, make a list of all the things everybody expects you to do and do the opposite. So 7 months later, I was on a plane to continue my comedy career here in St. John, New Brunswick. That's where it began. And I couldn't believe my luck. There I was, flying into a place that looked like this. I'd come from one of the most overpopulated, crime-ridden places in the world, and we're coming in. And I'll tell you how happy I was. This is how happy I was. I was so happy that on my first day here in New Brunswick, there we are, taking a selfie in Winners. I love Canada, Justin from England, and 7 years later, we could not be happier. We are absolutely living the dream here. But like I say, life is all about perception. Lots of people perceive England to be a certain way. When they picture London, they maybe picture what they've seen on holiday. They picture scenes like this. They're like, oh, I had a lovely time when I visited England. Why did you leave? And I'm like, well, because I didn't live in bloody Big Ben, did I? No, I lived somewhere far less glamorous. And you look at what people expect London to be. They think this or they think this. But the reality is, I had two good jobs. I worked for a magazine. I was a somewhat successful stand-up comedian in that I worked every night and got paid for it. But meanwhile, this is where I lived. This is the area I lived in. That was the reality of what I came home to every night, and I did not want that to be the place that I had to live. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's not what I wanted. I'll give you an example. There we were, two working professionals. The view from our front door was that, a burger and kebab shop. That was the view, right? A burger and kebab shop, which every single morning had just mountains of vomit outside it. Now, granted, some of the time it was my vomit, but that's by the by. My view now, the beautiful Kennebecasis River, which is actually behind right here. You won't be able to see, but it's behind right there. The beautiful Kennebecasis River in a house that costs a fraction of a doorknob in England. And if you vomit in that, it just washes downstream and comes out the taps in St. John. So everybody's winning. And people do often ask, why leave? Well, I mean, look, this was my daily commute to work. That was what everyone has to do. Every single day you walk down to a station platform, there are just thousands of people on that platform. There are more people on that platform than there are in all of New Brunswick, frankly. People wonder why the COVID spread so fast. There, like I say, you can go months, if not years in New Brunswick without making physical contact with another human being. Meanwhile, in London, by the time you get to work in the morning, you've had your face in 50 armpits, your elbow in 12 anuses. It's absolutely barbaric. You get onto those tube trains, you squeeze on. Look at that. You're packed in. You finally squeeze onto the train. You get on like this. You've been on the platform waiting for a train that wasn't full for an hour. And then once you're on the train, every now and again, when it's too crowded in there, you know what people do? They will literally wait for the doors to close. They'll hear the beep, 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 right? And they'll just push people out. People just being pushed out at random, not considered rude. Back when I was in London, I would do it. Someone would come in, I wasn't able to breathe. I would push them out. They would fall out. They wouldn't be annoyed. They would just dust themselves off and go, oh, fair enough. I did that to 12 people yesterday. That is normal, polite British etiquette, right? Meanwhile, right? That's what I grew up with. I now live in a place where I can wait 5 minutes for the Gondola Point ferry boat, for the commute to work, the Gondola Point ferry boat, get onto the Gondola Point ferry boat, get halfway across the water, some idiot arrives 3 minutes late, we will go back to get that person, but best of all, and most importantly, every single person on that boat is thinking, yes, this is absolutely the right thing to do. That right there is why I live here. But none of what I do now was on the cards for me. I mentioned that I was not remotely confident in class. My mum can't believe this is the job that I do, talking to people. She couldn't even get me to speak to other kids in my class, couldn't get me to approach other kids on our street. So for her, this thing that I became is still very confusing. This is what I look like at school. I did try very hard to be popular. As you can see, one of the things that I thought was maybe if I went to school dressed as Sid Vicious, people might like me. That particular day, I got thrown down on some concrete. The following day, I thought I might make people laugh and maybe then they would like me. So I put on this funny outfit. I thought, oh, maybe people will laugh. But as you can see, what happened immediately was thrown down again. And that was the story of my life. I would be thrown down and someone would give me a Milky Way chocolate bar to cheer me up. It was a tough time. No one knew why I was doing badly. And then one kind teacher figured out that I had a learning difficulty. I think he was rubbing salt into the wound there a bit when he said effort 2, achievement E. He's trying, but he's bloody failing. But I was struggling. I was sick a lot. I was at home a lot. And I would seek solace in listening to comedy tapes, watching comedy videos. I would sit and write my own stories. Most of my childhood was spent sitting at a desk, writing script ideas for films, writing jokes. I couldn't understand it when I would read about these comedians who I would watch on stage talking to hundreds or thousands of people. I would read their autobiographies, and they seemed to be oddballs like me, but somehow they did this incredible job. I'm like, how do you go from being that strange, shy person to being on a stage? And it fascinated me. And I spent all of my childhood studying this and obsessed with it, but I never, ever told anyone. And the first person I ever told was my English teacher, Mrs. Murphy. And Mrs. Murphy was an inspiration for many reasons. Many of the interests that I have today are things that she introduced me to. Some of the writers that I love. She introduced me to feminism and put me on a lifelong path of being obsessed with feminist literature and feminist readings. And thanks to her, she is the reason I studied English literature and women's studies at university. But one of the most amazing things this woman ever did was that we were studying for our A-levels, which you study when you're about 17 years old at school. And she was diagnosed with lung cancer. And she was, of course, told by the school she didn't need to carry on. Someone else would be taking over. And she said, no chance, I'm carrying on. I want to keep teaching them. So we would go to her house and she would be on her bed with tubes and pipes everywhere and continue to teach us. And she continued teaching us everything that was on the syllabus. But also would speak to us one-on-one and take time with us. And I don't know why it was I felt safe opening up to her, probably because we'd been so close for so many years, probably because she was such an inspiration, but also probably, as terrible as it sounds, I felt okay sharing my terrible secret with her because I knew she wasn't going to be around very long. Maybe that was partly, and maybe she knew that, and that's why she was taking this time with us. She knew that I was the shyest, most least confident child in the class, but I felt okay saying to her, I want to be a stand-up comedian. And she looked me in the eye and she said a sentence to me that I've never forgotten, that I still say to myself before shows, after shows, anything is possible. Now, I know anything is possible is not a particularly original phrase. I'm sure most of your schools have anything's possible up on the wall to inspire children. It is a very popular hashtag, but we shouldn't be ashamed or scared of cliches, because cliches are cliches for a reason. But to a very depressed, often suicidal teenager who saw no reason to live and no future for himself, those few words from the right person, a teacher, changed my life and inspired me. And she sat there and said, anything is possible, you can do anything you want. And I never forget that moment. I think of it often when I'm behind a curtain about to walk out on stage at a show, because I am still that person. I've taught myself this job, as we all teach ourselves what we do. But when I'm behind that curtain and I'm still that shy person waiting to walk out, I think of Mrs. Murphy and I think of that phrase. And it gives me the impetus to walk out, and something switches when I walk out and I turn into this other person that knows how to do stand-up. Of course, it took 15, 20 years of toil to get even half good at this job. But it was all thanks to a teacher. And I just want all of you to know that is what you are doing for these children every single day. And it's recognized by them. If not now, they will when they get to my grand old age. But it's certainly recognised by us as parents, and everything that you're doing every single day makes a difference. Everything that you say, it might feel like it's a cliche, but to a child who's struggling as I was, it can be quite literally life-changing. And so for me to have that impetus to be able to do the job that I want, and then come to a place where everyone says, oh, no, you can't be a comedian here. There's no comedy industry here. You can't do that here. You need to be in Montreal if you want to be a comedian. Well, that's not true, because, I mean, as proven by this, I mean, people like yourselves thinking of me for events like this. Tracy Como, a true hero, has been working for years bringing comedy to the Maritimes, but also taking New Brunswick comedians all around the world. This is what we have here. As I say, anything is possible here. But what we do have here is a contingent of people that will constantly tell you that things are not possible. And I greatly believe that every great idea that's ever been had here has began with people saying, no, you can't do that here. And I guess my advice is, if someone says, no, you can't do that here, that's just the reason to do it, because someone probably told the McCain brothers that no one wanted to buy French fries, but they didn't listen. Someone probably told Susanna Rowland when she sat in her garden in Halifax and said, I'm going to set up a brewery. They probably said, oh, no one wants that. Someone even probably told the Irvings that people wouldn't even want oil here. So just take it from me. If someone says you can't do something, you can do it. 4 years ago, I decided to put my anything is possible idea to the test and started a print magazine based out of New Brunswick. Some people say print is dead. Well, I beg to differ. I spend far more time holding paper, reading books, looking at magazines and newspapers than I do looking at my phone, because because print means something, paper means something. If someone wants to put it on paper, it matters. And we launched the Maritime Edit magazine in the summer of 2017, and everyone said it couldn't be done, and we're still going. We've even survived a global pandemic, stores being closed everywhere. I'm clicking through these layouts. There's the magazine on a newsstand based in New Brunswick, distributed nationally. Everyone said it couldn't be done. People said that you couldn't reach people in England with it. But as you can see here, the Sunday Times Travel, one of the most widely read Broad Street newspapers in England, declared New Brunswick to be one of the very best places in the world to visit, after reading a copy of the magazine and then inviting me to speak about New Brunswick. As you can see, the headline is "Go for Natural Beauty, Stay for Lobster Rolls," says comic and convert James Mullinger. The other places on that list: New York, Singapore, the Maldives, and New Brunswick. Why? Because anything is possible. People said to me, you want me to make a living here as a comedian, which I thought was very odd, because, okay, so there might not be hundreds and hundreds of comedians here or hundreds of comedy clubs, but at the end of the day, that means you can forge your own path. And that's the thing that I know that all of you are constantly putting into the heads of your students, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing, that they can forge their own paths here. There isn't a well-worn path for things. So when I came here and wanted to continue my comedy career, I did it the same way, because I found it odd. Why would you say to people, don't go there, there's no comedy clubs or whatever else? Because you think, well, you wouldn't say to a plumber, don't go there, there's no plumbers there. If there's no plumbers there, there's lots of toilets that need unblocking. So I like to see myself as the toilet unblocker of comedy. And I came here and I built my business the same way anyone would build their business anywhere in the world. A plumber would come in, do good work, people would tell people, and maybe it would spread. So that's what I did. I came here, I played a small show in a vineyard to probably 30 people. They seemed to think it was all right. They told some people. The following year, we had a couple of hundred. The following year, we had 100 more. So then I said, I think I might book the Imperial Theatre, try and see if I can sell out an 800-seater, try and do what I was doing in England. Everyone, especially my father-in-law, he said, oh, no one will come. No one will come. No, don't do that. No one will come. People did come. So I thought, well, if I'm going to do that, I may as well try and put it to the limit. I've done what I was doing in England. Let's see if you can come to a small place and not only continue what you were doing in a big city, but also elevate it. So I'd seen Bryan Adams play Harbour Station Arena in St. John with a capacity of 5,000. I'd seen Kiss perform, though. I thought I would love to play an arena. That was never going to happen for me in England. Why don't I give it a go? My father-in-law said, oh, no, that's not possible. You can't do that here. No, you can't do that. You know, why would people buy a ticket for you? They can see you in Sobeys any day of the week. What's the point of that? In 2016, I booked Harbour Station. Thanks to the support of this community, was able to fill it. Again, I can't put it down to my own skills or talents in any way. I put it down to simply the belief in New Brunswick of people that anything is possible. People want to embrace where they live. I never thought I'd be playing to an audience that size. As you can see, I mean, that is a ridiculous scale. Who would have thought I'd be going from that to this? But that's the nature of life. We will make it work no matter what in New Brunswick. There was headlines in England, unknown comic outsells Seinfeld again. Of course, it didn't make the news in Canada because it happened east of Quebec, and nothing makes the news east of Quebec. And all of this comes down to the same thing, which is that I truly believe anything is possible here. This last year has been altogether different for all of us, but New Brunswick is a truly magical place. And since that first visit here, all of those years ago, I've had a singular dream. And that singular dream has been to be considered a New Brunswicker. And I'm aware of how long that takes. I mean, a few years ago, I was given one of these, a permanent residency card, which I was so happy about because it means I can stay in this beautiful province forever. Although my wife pulled it out of my hand and said, yeah, that's great news, James. Shame there's a bloody expiry date on it. Likes to keep me in check. But my dream, as I say, is always to be considered a New Brunswicker. And I'm aware that it takes a lot of time. You can't just swan into that. I'll probably be a full-blown Canadian for about 20 years before I'm a New Brunswicker. But I'm going to do everything I can within my power to make that happen. I'll be honest with you, ladies and gents. I actually want to make homemade wine. Not just that, though. I want to make homemade wine out of a blue plastic barrel that I stole before the pulp mill shut down. I want to drive a four-wheeler on a highway the wrong way. I want to know how my truck handles on hiking trails. I want to wear head-to-toe camouflage just to go to Tim Hortons. I want to think it's perfectly acceptable to pick up women at the Irving Big Stop. I want to sneak into Costco using my Blockbuster card. I don't want to buy my fish from Sobeys. I want to buy it out the back of a pickup truck in a parking lot of where Zeller's used to be. My name's James Mullinger and I am a New Brunswicker. Thank you all very much. I would like to close today by sharing with you a story. This is a story that I was due to tell on stage on Saturday, the 14th of March last year. When lockdown happened on that dreaded Friday the 13th of March, we were all disappointed for different reasons. My initial disappointment was because I was supposed to be filming my new stand-up special on Saturday the 14th of March at St. John's Imperial Theatre. I'd been writing the show and honing it and planning it for 2 years, had a massive camera crew headed by Tyler Warren Ellis to film the stand-up special, and I had 100 minutes of brand new stand-up ready to be filmed, but I was going to end the show with a story, and I never got to tell that story on stage because it got shut down. The show got postponed 3 or 4 times and then we had to pull it completely because who knows when anything's going back to normal. So I never got the chance to tell the story. So if I may, I would like to share it with you now, my dear friends at New Brunswick Teachers Association. So come with me into my living room and let me tell you this story before we close today's session. Come along. Hi everyone, welcome to my living room. I thought it would be nice to do this as a fireside chat to close off today's session. This story that I would like to tell you is about a wonderful woman by the name of Sintra Lal. Sintra Lal was born in Trinidad in the 1950s. She had a wonderful upbringing and had one singular obsession when she was growing up, and that was children. She loved babies, she loved children, she just wanted to work with kids, but specifically she wanted to deliver children. So she worked very hard and became a nurse. And in the 1970s, was posted at the Royal Canadian Red Cross Hospital in England, where she was a midwife for close to 10 years. Now, during that time there, she delivered thousands and thousands of babies. It was the happiest time of her life. Her dream would come true. Sintra Lal had become a nurse and become a midwife, and every single day she got to see babies come into the world, and it was a joyful time. But life moves on. She met someone, she lived in France for a bit, Germany for a bit, and then eventually, decades later, she settled in a place called Ventura, which is a suburb in Los Angeles. Like lots of us that have family all over the world, her sister, Cheryl, who lived in a small town in Canada, had set up a Facebook group so that everybody could keep in touch and share their news. And of course, they had family still in Trinidad. Obviously, Sintra was now in America. Sister Cheryl was in Canada. And they had family all over the world. So they stayed in touch on this Facebook group. People would share news, exam results, people getting new pets. But Cheryl would often post questions to get everybody talking. And one day she posted, "When in life were you happiest?" And everyone had different answers. The day that my child was born, the day we got our dog, the day that I got married. But Sintra knew exactly when it was, and she said, in the 1970s, when I worked at the Royal Canadian Red Cross Hospital in England. So Cheryl immediately replied, do you have any pictures from this special time? And Sintra went through her boxes of treasures, and she could find only 3 things. One was this picture of her standing outside the hospital. The other was this picture of her on the grass outside the hospital. And the third thing she found was a thank you card that a mother had written to Sintra, to Nurse Lal, after she had successfully delivered her baby. Now, this was out of the ordinary for a couple of reasons. One, it was the only time in those 10 years that anybody ever left a thank you note for her. Now, of course, no one's expecting mothers to leave thank you notes after they've given birth. They've got a lot on their mind. They've got a new baby. But it just so happened that this one mother in that decade left a thank you note. And what really made it stand out also was that the letter was written from the perspective of the baby. So it was like, "Dear Nurse Lal, thank you for looking after my mummy and delivering me safely." And she kept this note and treasured it. And she scanned in those 2 pictures in the letter into the Facebook page when Cheryl had asked, do you have any mementos from this time? So everyone was looking at the 2 pictures of Sintra in the 70s at the Royal Canadian Red Cross Hospital in England, and the letter, which just moved people so much. There were tear emojis appearing. There was just dozens and hundreds of comments just would start appearing, and everyone was so touched by this beautiful letter. And Cheryl, Nurse Lal's sister, living in a small town in Canada, suddenly had an idea. She said, "Oh my goodness, we should try and find this baby." And Nurse Lal said, "Don't be ridiculous. That's going to be like finding a needle in a haystack. Don't even bother trying." But Cheryl was not to be deterred. So Cheryl went into Facebook and typed the baby's name into the search box. And she was absolutely gobsmacked to discover there were only 2 hits. It was quite a strange name, but there was only 2 hits. The first person was clearly far too old. The second looked roughly the right age, but bizarrely seems to live in the exact same small town in Canada as she did of Rossay, New Brunswick. Now that little baby was me, and Cheryl, the sister of the woman who delivered me and brought me into this world, lives 1 minute down the road from my house. Now, I joke a lot about it being a very small place here and everyone knowing everyone, but it's also a spectacularly small world. And I truly believe this was a sign that moving here was the greatest decision I could have made. That is Cheryl. Cheryl is also a nurse. She works at the St. John Regional here in St. John. Cheryl and I are now best friends. And Sintra Lal actually gave me the letter that my mother had given her. Thank you for bringing me safely into this world and for being so gentle and patient with my mummy from James Alexander Jordan Mullinger, delivered by Nurse Lal at 7:50 a.m. on the 14th of March, 1978. Now, the reason I was so excited to tell that story on stage at the Imperial Theatre on the 14th of March, my birthday last year, on film for my stand-up special, was that Sintra Lal had flown from Los Angeles here to St. John, and I was going to tell this story on stage, and the spotlight would have left the stage, and Sintra would have got up from one of the boxes of the side of the stage, and we would have embraced for the first time in literally 42 years to the day. And I would have made some silly joke like, oh, do you recognize me with my clothes on? Or hopefully I'm a bit bigger downstairs than the last time you saw me, but it wasn't to be. We did get a chance to meet before everything locked down. It was a beautiful, magical moment. We stood for this picture that you can see on screen right now. My son, Hunter, my eldest son, Hunter, actually shot a little film of the meeting, of us being reunited for the first time in 42 years, which if you'd like to watch, I think if you type James Mullinger and Nurse into YouTube, I hope that's the only video that comes up. But to me, this story sums up everything that is magical about this place and about this world. And I thank you for being here with me today. I'll be seeing some of you later for a workshop. But all it leaves me to say is really that I was joking earlier about films like Contagion and all these pandemic movies. And in those movies, apocalypse movies, whenever we would see the world coming to an end or some disaster happening, all we ever saw in movies was people turning against each other, neighbors turning on each other, friends and families turning on each other, communities turning on each other, people fighting over vaccines. But conversely, here in Canada, what we've seen is the polar opposite. We've seen people look out for each other, be there for each other, even provinces sharing vaccines with Ontario. Like, we have seen everyone come together and support each other. And I think that that's going to be the thing that we remember about 2020 and 2021, not the bad stuff. We're going to remember that we saw people come together and support each other, because that has always been New Brunswick's secret weapon. And let's not forget, were it not for a global pandemic, I would never in a million years have got to see my 7-year-old son waving his willy at 100 CEOs. And for that, we should all be thankful. I've been James Mullinger. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for your service. Good night.
Why did I leave London, England 5 years ago and move to New Brunswick? Let me show you.